Okay, this is a video about my initial attempt of trying to map a 3D space of how humans ought to live and how they tend to live. This kind of started out a couple of, I guess, a month or so ago at this point, with my idea of convergence fields, where I'm sure there's a more official name for it, but this idea that human societies or human individuals as well tend to trend towards specific paths, and that's that's how they choose to live, and that's how they find fulfillment in their own lives. Um, and I, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I will get into it a little later, but really that's the underlying rationale behind some of this. So anyway, I did this through a phase space, the phase space of human flourishing, I call it, or a phase space is a space of all possible states that a system can take. And in this version, it's kind of a 3D, like a topographical map kind of thing that I will show later on. So first of all, I got this idea from a video by Alpha Phoenix where he tries to reverse engineer Conway's game of life. So you put in an end condition and then it creates a starting condition, and it's really cool. But it's also how I was introduced, or I've heard of it before, but this is the first like in-depth example of one of these graphs that I've seen. And also the term phase space. I'm not sure if I've heard that before here. Um,
This
nope,
is kind
don't play. Okay. So I took a couple screenshots from his video, um, and this is the kind of phase space that he's talking about here. In this example, he has a district of a kingdom, and he wants it to be split evenly into um, divided in two evenly. And over here, this is the map of possible viable solutions um, that can create the up here is the color associated with the outcome that you're looking for. So if you take either of these examples, it's like green in the middle and yellow on the outside, or yellow in the middle and green on the outside. And around here, you can imagine splitting this down the center and kind of rotating it around the outside. Um, and that's kind of why it takes a triangular shape, I think. I'm not quite positive here. Um, and here's a 3D version of it, and kind of a better example of what I was talking about earlier there. But really, the way that a traditional machine would, or a traditional algorithm would find the solution that you're looking for is gradient ascent or descent, where you either walk up the path towards towards the solution you're looking for, or walk down the path if you're trying to find, like, I think a lot of AI or ML models use this to like lower runtime. So in that case, they want gradient descent. They want lower runtime, not or like more efficient. I think is I don't quite know. I don't quite know. This is really a lateral connection I'm making here. Um, but anyways, this is just an example, right? This is a very simple example where one of these models is super useful and a relatively simple phase space. However, in his actual example of trying to decode or backwards find an initial condition to produce an outcome um, in Conway's game of life, which is, if you don't know it, it doesn't really matter here. But it's just a game, a cell-based game with very simple set of rules that will produce complicated outcomes. And the interesting thing is that if you put an initial set of cells down and start it and just run it from there, then it will have a deterministic output, right? It will have a single output. Whereas if you start with the output and try to determine where that came from, there could be, I don't want to say any number, but I'm sure you could create a condition with massive amounts of possibilities to where of what started that, what the start condition was to produce that outcome. Um, and here, this is the phase space. This is the 3D topographical map that he's using, where each one of these peaks is the solution, is an actual solution to the problem. However, you have to like really, you start at a random location effectively and have to find one of these peaks, and it's one of these three peaks. And the interesting part is that in this example, there's a lot more local maxima. There's a lot more hills that are not actual solutions, but like almost approximate solutions, um, but don't actually get there in the end, right? So if you end up walking up one of these hills, ascending up one of these hills, and end up at a maxima, then you will inevitably have to go back downhill and try to chart a different course and continue to do that until you find a new solution, right? And I think, yeah, here, I'll go through this first. This is the desired outcome pattern that he was trying to produce. Um, and this guess is the starting condition that he was going through, and this is the result from the starting condition that he was getting. So as you can see, he's since this is not this is not a fit, but it's like you can see some resemblance to it, right? You can see how a computer might have ended up there in a certain circumstance. Um, and that would be an example of like walking up one of these hills, finding local maxima, and then not being able to um, like figure out where to go next. Um, and that's, I'll talk a bit about that later. But for now, that's all the information you need to know about my what did I call it? Map of human suffering. Phase space of human flourishing, or the opposite of suffering, actually. Um, Phase space of human flourishing. So this is pretty um, unresearched, frankly. I kind of came up with, I watched that video, liked that model, and then thought that it could be useful to useful as a way to map specific um, map idea space was the first thing that I went with, and I chose human flourishing not because I'm super like interested in it necessarily, but I think it has a solid fit compared to other ideological stances. Um, so this is more just something that I found interesting. Two pieces of string I connected, um, and less a formal like less of a formal theory and more a starting off point, or maybe some interesting piece of information that someone can pick up from here. Um, okay, getting into it, I have the same kind of thing where the red are the highest points, and I'm calling that perfect quality of life, which is not to say like happiness all the time. I'm kind of saying quality of life as uh, a general form of happiness or eudaimonia or flourishing. And just go with me here with that term, not exactly the the super important part of this, I guess. But the rest of this is the phase space, and I've found a couple of examples here of specific phenomena that I think people t- tend to be attracted towards. Um, And I will just start off with this kind of plane, this like purple plane at the bottom. I think is undifferentiated noise. You know that feeling when you kind of have no framework and just end up kind of completely disconnected from any sense of purpose or meaning or reality. Like you don't even have a nihilistic framework to fall back on. You are just experiencing without any map through which you can make sense of experience. That's noise, and that's not my idea. Um, I'm getting that from the YouTuber Dreg or JReg, which I like a lot of his content, especially his noise content and his framework content. I think that's it's very useful. So I'm calling kind of the bottom point here noise. Um, And from here, we can only really go up from noise. Um, the next kind of stance is nihilism or unnuanced existentialism, where you're kind of in a state of like apathy towards everything and having a feeling that like nothing is meaningful, and slightly a stronger feeling than nothing is meaningful. It's not just nothing has inherent meaning, it's everything is kind of disgusting in a certain way. I have slight amounts of disdain towards everything, and that's how I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna anything that passes through my um, frame of reference, I'm gonna say, that's a that disgusts me. That's gross to me. I don't like that very much. Um, which is a viable framework, or it's an internally consistent framework. It's not super viable. It's pretty low blue. It's not. It doesn't produce a super high quality of life. However, it's arguably better than being stuck in complete noise, complete nothingness, just kind of isolation from any frame. Um, so if you are stuck in noise, just go for any frame is kind of my opinion here. But whatever, that's kind of besides the point. Um, I think here I put adherence to status quo, and I of course the peaks and valleys here change depending on what the status quo is. And the status quo changes depending on different circumstances. Of course, status quo is always going to be variable, right? Um, but I'm using status quo kind of as both the system that you live within, the socio-political system that you live within, and also the general value system and how people believe that people should live their lives, just generally speaking. So, like in our society, it would probably be like go get a 9 to 5 job and work at your desk for until you're 65, and then you can go retire and have a family, start a family, and pour a lot of time into that, but also maintain a work life balance of some sort. And this is not a failing system by any means, right? It works for a solid number of people, um, and it works really well. It's kind of perfect for a small subset of people, right? But generally, it's kind of a greenish yellow system leading into the upper areas here, where it's like for some people, amazing system. I'm kind of one of those people where I fit into school perfectly my entire life. Have a brain made for the kind of system that we're in. Just like go do work all of the time. That's amazing to me. I love that. As long as the work is not totally unfulfilling. Um, but moving on from there, it's not a perfect fit for everyone. However, it does have peaks. It does actually fit our the point that we're searching for, unlike our previous example, right? And down here we have edge cases and extreme individualism. This is a an argument that have relied on a lot in the past when talking about how different things work, different systems work for different people. However, it ultimately is just edge cases. There are people in society that have the highest quality of life of going and murdering someone when they are 19 years old and then getting locked up in prison for the rest of their life. They are just completely content, like happy as a clam in jail. Um, and you know what? Good for them. That's a great system for them. However, they're always going to be edge cases, right? Um, and finally, the final real system here is like some form of personal meaning or tailored lifestyle where you are not living far from the status quo. However, you have kind of adapted some of the qualities to fit your uh, personal disposition or personal belief systems a little better. So maybe you have you're off the track a little bit, but like not super far. Um, and I think there's generally pretty solid outcomes here. Of course, anytime you stray off of the path of normalcy, that has some risks, right? You have to go through some level of noise to progress to a more personal lifestyle, right? but it has really good peaks. It has um, some valleys for sure, but generally, if you're putting in that work, you're probably going to find something that works for you as long as your standards aren't too high. So generally, I think that that is pretty solid. And I included a few local maxima here, kind of in between of like if you've wandered off the path and like haven't really found something that like gives you a full sense of purpose or like is personally meaningful to you but comes along with no community or any one of these things where it has like some real downsides to it. These are kind of local maxima where they will top out around here um, and will not yield amazing quality of life, but they're probably solid for a lot of people. Um, and then over here, the fog of war. We don't know what's over here. We know all of this and probably a couple of other general ideas that I haven't included in this model. However, I think there's a large part of idea space of human flourishing. Uh, what's this called? Space map. Phase space. I think there's a large amount of flourishing phase space that is yet to be uh, uncovered or fully demystified. Um, and I think that there's value in just looking over there, even if you kind of just wander down from one of these hills, one of these mountains, and kind of end up in noise for a while, but are trending in this direction. I think that that is I think that's useful information and also very interesting because it does provide something new and I will say novelty is definitely one of my axioms, at least for this framework that I'm encompassing in my life right now. Um, but if we can find ways to generally trend in this direction, and I, I'm not sure I have these mapped to each other in relative space all that well. Like I don't know that trending away just from the status quo does much. Yeah, I think you need some direction. And I have neglected to include any instruction on how one might do this, other than kind of saying that there could be more out there. There really could be alternatives out there that have not been explored. I mean, humans tend to find a solution that or find a pattern within their social setting or their system of being um, that works well enough and then attach onto that. Once you have a critical mass of working well enough, that kind of sticks and says like this is pretty solid, guys. We don't want to go mess with the pretty solid right now. I mean, it could get a lot worse. It could get a lot worse from here. Um, but an inevitable consequence of that is leaving the fog demystified, or leaving the fog mystified, I should say. Um, so start wandering if you have the capacity to, or if, especially if you're already in noise, if you're kind of disillusioned with multiples of these systems and are interested in heading in a new direction and you currently have nothing, if you're in noise, just start wandering. Don't wander towards the newest thing. I know I said earlier, like find any system, find the closest system, find the closest frame and attach to it as quickly as possible. And that's good personal advice. But personally, I'm curious about what's out there in the fog. So please wander into the fog. Um, Come out with your findings. Leave a comment on my video. If you the viewer have wandered into the fog, please leave me a comment and let me know what's out there. Um, Another interesting consequence of this is that in this model where there was a desired outcome and a guess, and the desired outcome ended up at a local maxima, or there's a there's a pattern that you want, then there's a guess of what could produce that pattern, um, and the result does not match that because the guess has ended up at a local maxima. This model included randomization It included small amounts of, it was I think even earlier it said, yeah, stochastic gradient descent or ascent. So it's a stochastic, meaning somewhat, it has randomness built into the system. So when it wanders up to a local maxima, it has been told to find a different way, start like wander in a random direction and start wandering. However, the pull of these local maxima is so great. They're like broad enough, I think, or something like that, or there's enough pits below it that it kind of gets stuck there, and it doesn't know how to update from there. The randomness built into the system is not enough to progress to a different area. And one of the interesting consequences I think about that is that let me, yeah, I'll go here. Um, is that like the idea of systems theory or cybernetics, where like 80% of the population does one thing, and then like 20% kind of wander in new directions to help the tribe out, trying to explore new opportunities. Like I think this is a pretty well established thing. I haven't looked into it in a while, but I think like ant hills and stuff follow this principle too, of like 80% of the ants follow the herd, then 20% will kind of like wander off in a different direction trying to find something new. Positing wildly here, that means that there's no way to wander into the fog with a cybernetic system, because the randomness built into the system, built into the human system, does not allow us to properly detach from the local maxima or from the actual solutions, right? So we are pretty limited in our capacity to wander between different islands here, and we have not yet wandered out of that territory. Let me get some water. I've got one more point before I wrap this up. There's there's one more interesting interesting visualization things here, which is uh, you run into in a lot of texts that I won't name here so that I don't sound super pretentious. You find this idea of self-destruction or self annihilation in some form to an active form of self-destruction to allow yourself to build something new and to will yourself to the bottom of the pit so that something new may come, something new may arise, a new system may be born out of the old. Um, uh, and I think this system illustrates it fairly well. Of like, let's say something amazing is out here in the fog, right? We are currently here, let's say, uh, even easier, I think, might be to say like this island, this red perfect quality of life island is over here, um, and it's a pretty short trek from where you are now, which is like a pretty good standing, right? Um, However, to get over there, you have to will active self-destruction or active self. Um, uh, I don't know how I want to phrase it because it inevitably sounds more severe than it is in any formal or any normal human setting, right? Because I do think that wandering from one of these points into here is much closer to active self annihilation, um, active self destruction. However, just wandering from here to here, which are both well mapped, already previously mapped points with a clear path, that's not really self-destruction in any meaningful sense of the word, right? You wander into noise for a bit, which is uncomfortable, but it's not. You have a path. You actually don't. I guess there should be paths. There should be like blue paths between all of these, because even if you're wandering between different points, you're not in noise. The only time you're in noise is when you are abandoning one of these systems or cast out from one of these systems, disillusioned with one of these systems, or I think arguably wandering out of nihilism. If you're leaving nihilism, you like these systems are already close enough to have some form of intercompatibility where like things will generally slide somewhat smoothly across different different peaks here. So if you wander from one area, or different islands, I should say, if you wander from one island to another island, then like there's some transferable skills that you take with you. Whereas if you are an actual nihilist, which I've never met, but I have to imagine just like the perfect form of a nihilist. Just imagine that for the sake of argument here. If you're an actual nihilist that kind of disdains everything and engages with life in that capacity, then wandering out, you do end up in noise. You have nothing of substance to bring to one of these other islands. Like there, you have no transferable skills, so you do end up in this voidic pit before you wander into something new. I don't exactly know what my point here was going to be, other than like wandering into the abyss is a form of active self-destruction, and I think that it's a cool um, illustration of this. And yeah, I will say this too. I love being young. I love being young and not having many ideas inside of my head, and everything is like new to me, and I can make all of these different connections without like having past experience of like having seen these connections made elsewhere. And I think that's where a lot of my content comes from. Just on a more personal note, I guess, is that I I'm coming into a point of my life where I am constantly engaged with new information and new things, and everything is bright and shiny and colorful. And it's not like when I was a baby and I had no sense of the world. I have a vague map of the world at this age, at this stage in my life. And right now I am coming into advanced map technology. Not just advanced map technology, but also I'm starting to walk through the different parts of the map and see the map, and the map is no longer just a map, but it's a world. It's a world that the map relates to. It's not just a map of the world. And as you continue to wander down that path, you continue to find different things and are able to relate them to each other in ways that are novel to you, potentially not novel at all to anyone else in the world, and potentially just worse versions of things that have come before you. So, this is all to say that this could easily be a terrible system, terrible visualization, where there could be much better versions of everything said in this video in some other version of this thought or some unrelated thought, and this could just be garbage. However, it's about the process for me. It really is, of just finding different things and smashing them together so that my mental map of the world becomes a little bit clearer, especially with the areas that I'm interested in right now, which tend to be like idea or philosophy focused. Um, so, so that's all to say. Uh, if this video is worth disregarding, then disregard this video. Um, and on that note, I will continue to smash systems together with my bare hands, trying to create something new for once in my life. And I will continue to upload all of those videos. And if you like the slop, you will continue eating the slop. I'm being mean to my viewers now. I'm being mean to my subscribers. I do really enjoy hearing everything you guys have to say. I didn't expect the channel to get literally any traction. So I have like 50 subscribers right now. Shocking that I have 50, frankly. I did not expect to get 50. I was really uploading these videos for my older self. Um, However, on that note, I have been rambling for far too long. I will attempt to get some sleep so that I'm well rested enough tomorrow uh, to make some new lateral connections. So on that note, good night, sleep well. I love you all.